straight playoff series, which is the longest streak of its kind in NBA history, and candidly is just ridiculous. And the Raptors are making their first NBA Finals appearance. No team making their first appearance has won the title since the Heat in 2006. Now, this doesn't happen altogether that often, and it is still a comparatively young franchise, and here they are. Now, here's the bad news if you're rooting for Toronto. History suggests they have almost no chance to win. 2-1 underdogs are 1-19 in the finals over the last 50 years. And we had this as Hembo Trivia the other day. The only team to overcome that were the 2004 Pistons, who beat Kobe and Shaq and the Lakers. Toronto is plus 250 at Caesars Sportsbook. So we want to get right to the end, and then we'll work our way back to the beginning. Jay, I'll start with you. Who is going to win the NBA Finals and how?
If Kevin Durant doesn't play, I got the Raptors winning in 7. If he doesn't play, I got the Raptors winning in 7. I think the interchangeable parts, the versatility of Toronto defensively, the way they can switch positions 1 through 5, it will really, I think, be to the detriment of Golden State because, look, they're going to have to chase Steph and Clay down. But I think they have the pieces to actually do so. Now, Kawhi is a little bit beat up, but if there was a great situation that they did on SportsCenter the other day where they're talking about AI, and they're talking about what happens when AI becomes alive, when artificial intelligence actually gets somewhat of emotion, and then they showed a clip of Kawhi. Like, that is Kawhi. He's a cyborg.
I was wondering where you were going.
He's the one player that I think can have the responsibility defensively and also carry the load offensively if Kevin Durant is not playing in this series.
Okay, so if they are, whether or not he plays or not, Kevin Durant, I believe that the Warriors are going to win in 6. And the reason why I believe that they will get this done is because of their movement. You look at the defense that Toronto played against Milwaukee. Milwaukee was in every game and had every opportunity to get it done, but they really didn't have that last 3-4 minutes. Milwaukee looked more like Houston in the last 3 or 4 minutes. Where Golden State, that movement is constant for them. Clay, Steph, Draymond is playing the best basketball he's played in years. So I really just think that the Golden State Warriors will continue that movement and open things up.
Can you just stop comparing Milwaukee's defense to Toronto's defense? That's so disrespectful.
I'm not comparing
Milwaukee's defense ranks 9th in the playoffs. Ninth in the playoffs. Toronto was top 3.
I was talking about the offense that Milwaukee was playing. I say Golden State in the late game situations where Milwaukee struggled will not be doing that. There will be open shots and layups for everyone because of the way they play and that open style of basketball they've been playing since KD's been out.
To call what Milwaukee was running in those last few minutes of that game in offense, an insult to offense anyway.
It was like Houston. It was like one guy at the top, and you had shooters around him, a lot of one-on-one, and then it was just the inability to finish.
For what it's worth, my initial inclination, and I allowed myself to be talked out of this because I listened to a lot of people this week, was to take the Warriors in a sweep. I have just seen them rampaging through everyone. So my official prediction is going to be Warriors in 6.
Okay.
Because I believe they will win, and I just until I see someone beat those guys, I'm not going to believe it's going to happen.
Warriors in 6. Stay
Correct.
on this side.
Warriors in 6. We're on this side of that, and Jay Will is sitting all by himself. Now, if it's going to go the other way, everyone would assume that Kawhi Leonard will be a huge part of the reason why. He has been a dominant player in this postseason. I want you to hear what both Draymond Green and the Raptors general manager Masai Ujiri had to say about Kawhi yesterday.
I think the challenge with Kawhi is it doesn't look the same. Like, you know, when Steph dominated a game, like Kevin dominated a game, Damian Lillard dominated a game, LeBron dominated a game. Like, it does not look the same as when Kawhi is dominating the game. It's not as pretty, but boy, is it effective. You know, Kawhi didn't come into this league as a scorer, yet he's one of the best scorers we have in the league now.
He's the best two-way player in the NBA, and when we talk about basketball, we're talking about playing on both ends, and I feel that if we put him on both ends of the court, he has the ability to be the best player in the league.
So I think all of us who look at this thing and say Kawhi will have to be brilliant in order for the Raptors to win. I don't think anyone would disagree with that notion. So does that mean in your mind there's more pressure on Kawhi Leonard in these finals than anybody else?
Well, first off, Kawhi Leonard is a blue-collar superstar. He's a blue-collar superstar. He does all the dirty work, all the grit and grimy stuff that you don't see a lot of other superstars do because he's a great two-way player. I don't think there's any pressure on Kawhi at all. I don't think there's any pressure on Kawhi. I think Kawhi is playing with house money. I think if he wins this thing, that's great for Kawhi. That might incline him to stay in Toronto.
He's already won a championship.
He's already won a championship. If he loses, then you know what? He can go to the Clippers and he can do his thing too. Look, Usai Ujiri made the ultimate bet. He brought Kawhi Leonard on board. Now, I'm not saying that Kawhi won't take this personally to try to win a championship, but I still think that there's no pressure on Kawhi. Like, Kawhi got this team there. Like, Toronto's never been to the NBA Finals. He's got them way past the point they've ever been.
Yeah, no, see, for me, I believe it's Steph, and not because of legacy or any of that. I think Steph Curry and this team, there's so much pressure on him to deliver. He hasn't had a great dominant finals, not yet. He's been very good. Again, his numbers are, more impressive than most players could ever dream of. But Steph Curry, in order for this team to win a championship without KD, he's got to be elite and he's got to be high level. That's something that they need, and I think he wants for himself. That's the final piece of the puzzle. I think his legacy is fine regardless.
I actually think both are true, which is to say I think there is a lot of pressure on Kawhi to the extent that I think if he doesn't play well, his team has next to no chance to win. That creates pressure, however significant you want to make it. But I think the real spotlight is on Steph, because I do think there is a legacy question involved here. Yeah. Steph Curry is already he's going to go down as the greatest shooter of all time and an all-time great. If he carries, without Kevin Durant, this team to a championship and wins a finals MVP, I think it elevates him. I genuinely believe there is another level to which Steph Curry's legacy can be elevated, and I think this series could do it.
But I think the pressure is not legacy-based. I think it's because he wants to play well. He hasn't played his best basketball in the finals, and so for that, there's that personal pressure and team pressure because they need him.
I think that's fair. Maybe it's less about pressure than it is at stake. He has a lot at stake here to the positive. Yes. I think he can play poorly and his team can win.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit less pressure. But he can make himself one of the greatest players that ever lived if he's the MVP of these finals.
I agree. I also think there's a lot of pressure on Kevin Durant, because if they happen to get down a couple of games, and KD with that strained calf is going to need to come back and be that player that we thought he was before he got hurt.
Well, that's the big question that hovers over this entire series. Will we see Kevin Durant? And if so, what will he look like? We have much more on the finals, as you would imagine, but let us switch lanes now to a team that's not here. Yesterday, breaking news. There was a bunch of it, actually, from Woj yesterday, and he has more for you this morning. But let's start with this. Adrian Wojnarowski reporting yesterday, Rockets general manager Daryl Morey is being very aggressive trying to improve his roster. He is apparently willing to use picks and making all players available. Now, in the report, Woj specifically said it's difficult to envision a situation where James Harden is involved in a trade. But how about Chris Paul? Chris Paul has an unbelievable amount of money still coming to him. I think I already knew this, but when I saw the number last night, it jumped off the page at me. He's due $124 million over the next 3 years. Chris Paul.
Until he's 37.
Until he's 37 years old. That's an extraordinary amount of money. So I guess I would ask, if he wants to make some sort of blockbuster move for the Rockets, is there one to be made?
I don't think so. I actually find it ironic that the team named the Houston Rockets are actually trapped in time and space. Right? It's so ironic. They're trapped because and I'm so confused by this too, RJ. Like, I do not understand. So you want to change up the entire personnel, but you don't want to change up the coach. So what you're saying is that the strategy that the coach has is a championship strategy, but the players that you have aren't championship caliber. I don't think the strategy, I don't think the style in which they play offense is championship offense, but you're staying committed to the offense.
I've been convinced that Daryl Morey, and again, I know everyone knows how great he is, but watching some of the moves that he has made over this last year and just kind of how he's retooled his team, I believe he has a plan. So that's the thing that I'm very, very curious to see what this plan is. Like, he's making everyone available. He is not being shy about it. So he knows that there's something and there's an opportunity out there to make his team better. But I agree with you. D'Antoni gets an extension. They change a bunch of assistant coaches, and you make your entire roster available.
Could I just throw this out there? Like, they've been the second. I know they were the 4th seed this year, but they've been the next team in the West for some time now. Yeah. If Kevin Durant leaves Golden State, maybe their best chance to win it is actually next year. Wouldn't you bring the crew back together for one more shot at it without Golden State in your conference and see if you can win it now?
I would say this: the loss that they had this year without KD in the conference semis, I think that kind of was eye-opening to them. They were like, we might be further away than we think because we're going to be a year older. Chris Paul's going to be a year older next year. So the path doesn't get easier even if Kevin Durant leaves.
There were times last year in their team that PJ Tucker was their second best player. And I love PJ Tucker with a ton of love and respect I have for PJ. Like, that can't be the case if you want to be an NBA championship team. And also CP3, like, as a gifted player as he is, he's missed 48 games over the past 2 years. So if injury, you keep factoring that into the equation, you have to try to make some moves. I just don't know what other sign and trade opportunities out there you can do for a guy like CP3 that's guaranteed $38.5 million next year and 41.4 the next. I mean, that's insane.
It's an extraordinary amount of money for a guy at this stage in his career. Look, he's an historically great player.
He's earned it.
But right now, he is an above-average point guard. Right? I mean, that's what he is. He's no longer that elite all-time level.
He went from
great
superstar
player.
to star to tradable asset.
Let me stick with Woj here because we had more from yesterday. He reported that Anthony Davis met, my understanding is it was for breakfast, with new Pelicans Executive Vice President David Griffin in Los Angeles to discuss his future with the Pelicans, meaning AD's. Davis, by now you are well aware, requested a trade in January. It basically derailed the seasons of two different franchises. But Griffin is now in place. He was hired in April. The two are expected, this is the way the report was phrased, to continue a dialogue in the near future. And I don't know, when I read that yesterday, are expected to continue a dialogue in the near future, my first thought was, do they have a chance to try and talk AD into staying in New Orleans, team with Zion and Drew Holiday, and form their own little super team? Do you see a way he stays there?
I do see a way, and I think Griff is doing it the right way, right? He's just, hey, I want to meet with you. I want to talk with you. I want to show you what we're going to do differently. But also what this does is, even if he is traded, this adds value to Anthony Davis, because now teams are like, hey, well, New Orleans, they might keep him. And so they might keep him through the year. Everyone talks about trade value being its highest right around the draft. But if all of a sudden they can convince him and he kind of softens his stance a little bit to see what he can do with Zion, then all of a sudden, you know, I think there could be some conversations had.
Smart move by Griffin, but this reminds me of like a crazy ex that I had in the past, okay? So crazy ex.
I think you were the crazy
You walk
ex.
in, that could be true too. So I walk in and you're like, you know what? Look, I love you. I think this whole thing is great. We really got to work on this, but, you know, and she's telling me her whole thing about how this is going to be great. We're going to work through it. And then I leave the room like, I'm out. I'm gone. I'm playing the game, but I'm playing the game with the intention that I am still leaving. I mean, look, Rich Paul and this whole team have been very adamant about they're still on the same page about what AD wants. And let me pose this to you guys. All right, so say the Golden State Warriors break up a little bit. They still have cap room to sign another free agent. Because don't forget, Klay Thompson can't get the Supermax. Denver is still coming. They were just 1 year away as far as experience. Utah is somewhat there. Portland's there. I mean, the Clippers are going to get better if they get Kawhi. So, look.
You're saying get to the East.
I think the East is the move. I know he wants to play with LeBron.
Yes.
But I think getting to the East is the move for.
Yeah, well, look, you're right. They are further away. But if you're talking about pairing up with a superstar for the next 10 years, Zion could be that guy. He could be a high-level player, and that's ultimately what you want. Going to L.A., going to these other markets, there's not a guarantee that you could get a dominant player like that.
I just feel like Zion is a great player, but guys, he's so athletic. I know he's a highlight reel all the time, but there are certain skill sets that he does not have that maybe potentially he can evolve into, but he's not going to be an isolated player that you're going to say, hey, go like KD, go give me 25 and 10. He's going to get his points in transition and rim runs.
Yeah.
We'll see what winds up happening. We will get more from Woj. He's going to join us live a little later this hour with some other news as well. But right now, let me get up and go because we have a bunch of other stuff going on. Bill Belichick.